It was around 8 a.m., and Lisa was sound asleep in her bed when she was awakened by the sound of her alarm. She didn't normally get up at this hour, but she was going on a cruise with her husband and close friends. He had washed his hands and face and woke up his daughter, who was sleeping downstairs, and dressed her, then took her to his neighbor's house and left her there. When her husband Jack came home, he returned with his friends. There were 4 of them: Lisa, Jack, Tom, and Millie. They drove to the yacht Tom had rented for the day, and after about an hour they arrived at their destination. Everyone was so excited, but no one knew it was going to be a nightmare, especially Lisa. After parking the car on the shore, Jack took the drinks and the food and went to the yacht. Then everyone got on the yacht. Tom had driven the yacht to a deserted sea because they didn't want anyone to disturb them. After they had been out at sea for a while, they went to the area they had marked on the map, their phones, and stopped the yacht. They had to get back in time for the evening, so they quickly set up their table and started drinking. The drinks and food going fast, and the good times they had. After getting a little drunk, it was getting dark and cold. Lisa approached Jack and spoke. "Our daughter is at the neighbor's, but I said I'd come back and pick her up this evening, and now it's time to go." Then Jack went to Tom and told him about it. Everyone had gathered, and all that was left was to go back. It was getting dark, so they set off quickly, but the boat's electrical system was not working, and there was a strange malfunction. They all tried to fix it together, and when they were tired and hungry, they noticed a small motor boat on the boat. Everyone boarded the small boat with anxiety, but there was nothing to do. After a bit of sailing, they came across a huge cruise ship, a very old ship, but at least there would be someone on board to help them. They looked at the ship from a distance. No one was on board, and after watching the ship for a while, they realized that someone inside the ship was looking at them. After happily docking the small boat with the big ship, they all went on board the big ship. There was a lot of food and a place to stay. But there was a problem. Nobody knew how to use this ship. They all split up on the big ship and looked for the person who had taken care of them in the first place. Jack went up to the top floor of the ship while Lisa and the others went down to the lower floors. Tom was wandering around the top floor when he heard it tapping and went over to where he heard it. Suddenly there was Lisa, and she had a sack over her head that didn't show her face. She looked at him puzzled and spoke. "Lisa, what are you doing here? And why do you have a bag over your head? You're supposed to be downstairs." Lisa slowly approached Tom with her hands behind her back, and the room was very quiet. As Tom became agitated and spoke again, Lisa took a knife from behind her back and stabbed him. The stab was right in the chest, and it was a fatal blow. She quickly covered Tom's mouth with her hand and hid his dead body in the room without making a sound. While the others were searching downstairs, Millie went upstairs to look for Tom. She looked everywhere for Tom, but she could never find him. At last she went into a room where the floor was wet, and there was blood. Millie was scared and looked where the blood was coming from and saw Tom's body. She started screaming and yelling. She ran downstairs screaming and crying, and Jack and Lisa ran to Millie. Millie told them what she had seen, and they all went upstairs, and Jack had an iron stick in his hand as a precaution. When they got upstairs, Tom's lifeless body was really lying on the floor, and Jack quickly gathered everyone and went downstairs. But when they got back, someone had cut the rope that they had tied their little boat to. They all went back and gathered, and Jack went upstairs with the stick, and he was trying to figure out what was going on. Then suddenly he heard Lisa's voice, and he turned around, and Lisa was coming towards him with a sack over her head. Jack looked at Lisa, strange and uneasy. "Lisa, what are you doing? You were supposed to stay downstairs with Millie. Do you think it's funny to do that in a situation like this?" Jack was obviously upset, and Lisa slowly approached Jack and hugged his neck and said, "I'm so sorry, Jack, but I love you very much." After saying this, he put the knife he had killed Tom within Jack's back, and Jack threw himself on the ground in pain and screamed. Lisa Millie helped. As his bloodied body lay dying on the floor, the girls were going around the rooms. There was the sound of high heels behind them, and they ran towards the sound and shouted, "Is anyone here? Please help us." As Millie was running ahead, and Lisa was running behind her, Millie suddenly stopped in the hallway, and she spoke quietly. "Lisa, please help me." Lisa didn't understand what had happened. Lily said this, and suddenly she collapsed on the floor, covered in blood. In front of her was a man who looked very much like her, with a sack over his head. Then Lisa, with a sack over her head, who also killed Millie, said the following, "I'm sorry, but I need to see my daughter. I miss her so much." After saying that, he suddenly ran at Lisa and attacked her. They both rolled on the floor, and Lisa kicked him off of her. She got up and immediately picked up the knife. The killer had dropped and stabbed him. The killer was screaming in pain on the floor. Lisa still didn't understand what had happened. The killer had bled to death. Lisa slowly approached him and looked at the killer. He looked so much like her, and when she took the sack off his head, she was so scared because he was the killer. She ran around looking for Jack, but when she found him, she threw herself on the floor crying. 2 days had passed, and Lisa had been all over the ship. As he toured the ship, he realized that he was the only one living on it, and it wouldn't move no matter what. There was also a room in the ship, and in this room there were the bodies of Millie, Jack, Tom, and himself, and there were a lot of these bodies. The ship was in a paradox, and the same thing was happening all the time. 4 of them were coming to this ship, and they were dying all the time. Lisa had collected all the bodies and put them all in that room and locked the door.
Then she was looking at the top of the ship,
wondering what to do when she saw a small boat far away. And there were 4 people on the boat: Jack, Tom, Millie, and herself. He had a sack over his head, and he had the knife that he had taken from the killer, and he had a sack over his head, and he couldn't see his face. Now all that was left was to take their place and get rid of this paradox.